Our body is fighting against those infectious agents, which we call them as foreign bodies or foreign agents. In response to the antigens entering into a body and that army of proteins which helps in fighting those antigens, we call it as the antibodies. These virus-infected cells, they are capable of spreading their infection to the neighboring cells also. We have immune system, and those immune system will produce immune cells which are called as antibodies. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to the session for class 12 biology. I'm Dr. Divya, biology faculty. So in this session of chapter 7, that is human health and diseases, we shall learn about immunity, wherein we learn about innate immunity and acquired immunity. So talking about immunity, so we all know that every day we are exposed to various types of environmental pollutants, allergens and pathogens. Or in one term, if I have to say, we are exposed to a lot of infectious agents. Now, when we are exposed to a lot of infectious agents, we tend to fall sick. And if that is the case because of the pollution or because of the n number of infectious agents that are present in the environment, every day we need to fall sick, right? But is that the case? Do we fall sick or remain sick every day? No. It is because we remain healthy in spite of our body facing different pollutants in the environment or allergens or infectious agents in the environment is because of immunity that is rendered by our body. So therefore, though some of the infectious agents causes diseases in we human beings or animals, there are some infectious agents which do not cause diseases. So they do not cause diseases is because our body is fighting against those infectious agents, which we call them as foreign bodies or foreign agents. So therefore, the overall ability of our body, which is the host, or the overall ability of the host to fight the disease-causing organisms or the infectious agent conferred by the immune system is called by immunity. So in a body, we have immune system, and those immune system will produce immune cells which are called as antibodies, and those antibodies will fight against those infectious agents, therefore keeping us healthy or protecting us from the external environmental sources which are capable of causing infection in our body. And this immunity is of two types. So we have innate immunity and acquired immunity. So talking about innate immunity, the word itself says innate, meaning it is within ourselves. So therefore, we get it right from the birth, or maybe as we age also, immunity tends to develop in a body. So that is about innate immunity. It doesn't come from an outside source like a vaccination or immunization or an antibiotic and all that. It is present in a body right from the birth. So that is called as innate immunity. So innate immunity is non-specific. Non-specific means it is a general immunity which protects a body from infectious agents. It doesn't mean that you will not get any disease, but even though if you get a disease or a common cold or something, our body's immune cell which are there will be capable of protecting us from adverse symptoms caused by those infectious agents. So therefore, innate immunity is a non-specific type of defense that is present right at the time of birth itself. And this innate immunity is accomplished or obtained by a body by providing different types of barriers to the entry of the foreign agents into a body. So innate immunity, it is non-specific. So innate immunity, say for example, antibodies or antibiotics, they are specific to a particular pathogen, but innate immunity is not specific to a particular pathogen. It overall renders some immunity in our body to fight the infectious agents so that we will be capable of bearing the adverse symptoms that they cause. So there are different barriers in our body which acts as innate immunity that is present right within us itself right from the birth. So they are physical barriers, physiological barriers, cellular barriers and cytokine barriers. So let us look at them one by one. So what are physical barriers? Physical barriers, something which can see, something which stands like a wall that protects our body from infectious agents. So one of the best example for a physical barrier is the epidermal layer of our body, right? What is the epidermal layer? It is nothing but the skin. So skin is one of the best example. So you're walking in a polluted area, you're walking in a dirty place, you are exposed to n number of infectious agents in the environment. So the first thing it comes in contact is with the skin. So therefore, skin is such a physical barrier that actually protects a body from the entry of these infectious agents or pollutants and many other things. So skin on our body is the main barrier which prevents the entry of the microorganism, and that is what it is visible. So morphologically or externally we have skin, right? So now say for example, we have nostrils. Is our nostrils covered by the skin? No, we have nostrils which are the openings of the nose. So there are some pathogens through the air, it can enter into a body, right? So there also, can skin act as the barrier? No. So there are some other barriers which are present inside a body also, which helps a body or stay away from these pathogens or helps in preventing the entry of the pathogens into a body. So such examples are the mucus coating. So what is mucus? Mucus are nothing but slimy. So inside your nose it is wet. In your intestinal region it is wet. Your esophageal region or your respiratory tract is wet. They are wet or they are moist because they have mucus, which is a slimy fluid. That slimy fluid actually prevents the entry of the pathogens into our airways and all that, and that is why our lungs are protected. Otherwise, for these amount of pollution that we are dealing with every day, it would have been a great problem for us, right? So therefore, mucus coating of the epithelium lining, that is mucus coating lining the respiratory tract, the gastrointestinal tract and the urogenital tract also help in trapping microbes entering into a body. So whenever microbes tend to enter in through the nostrils, or whenever some allergens try to enter into the nostril, the mucus coating that is there, it will collect those microbes and it will make us sneeze. And that sneeze, when you sneeze, those microbes will come out along with the mucus coating. That is nothing but the mucus that comes in the form of phlegm or in the form of mucus, it will just come out. So that is how these mucus coating of the respiratory tract, the gastrointestinal tract and the urogenital tracts help protect our body from the pathogens that are there in the environment. So these are the physical barriers. So one of the example is skin. The other examples are mucus coating of the respiratory tract, gastrointestinal tract and the urogenital tract. So moving further, talking about the physiological barriers. So when I say physiological, we are talking about some of the enzymes and the acids that are present inside our body, which helps protect our organs from certain infectious agents. Say for example, in the stomach. In stomach, we have acid, that is HCl, right? So because of HCl, any worm or anything or enters into a stomach, by mistake you consume it, it will get digested because of the HCl acid that is present, right? So therefore, HCl that is there in the stomach acts as a physiological barrier. Saliva in the mouth, right? The saliva has a lot of antibacterial properties. So saliva in the mouth also acts as a physiological barrier. Then tears from the eyes. So whenever something enters into your eyes, your eye will start to water. Or if you're prone to some allergies, your eye will start to water. That is because if any allergen has entered into your eyes, it can come out in the form of tears. So that is why. So therefore, tears from the eyes is also a physiological barrier. So these are some of the physiological barriers, that is acid in the stomach, saliva in the mouth and tears from the eyes. Next, talking about cytokine barrier. So cytokine barrier. So these virus infected cells, they are capable of spreading their infection to the neighboring cells also. So creating a lot of damage. So our body is designed in such a way that it renders immunity in the form of cytokine barriers. Say for example, one of the cell is infected by the virus. It will prevent the infection. There are some proteins which are called as alpha interferons. So these proteins will be, or which are called as interferons, these proteins will be secreted or produced by the cells. Therefore, it will alert the neighboring cells to produce some protection so that the infection will not spread to the healthy cell. So that is called as cytokine barriers where cell is involved. So what happens here? Say for example, a virus has infected the cell. we have numerous cells in our body. So the infection should not spread to the neighboring cells. So that time the infected cells, it will start secreting a protein which is called as interferons, and these interferons in turn, it will protect the non-infected cells from getting further infection, therefore preventing viral spread inside our body. So that is about cytokine barrier. Next, talking about cellular barriers. Cellular barriers, various types of cells which we call as the leukocytes. So leukocytes are nothing but the WBC, that is the white blood cell or the white blood corpuscles. So the white blood corpuscles of a body, for example, polymorphonuclear leukocytes, which we call it as PMNL neutrophils. So these polymorphonuclear leukocytes, they are a type of granulocytes because they are grainy in texture. They are a type of granulocytes and they are capable of releasing some enzymes when an allergen or an infectious agent enters into a body, therefore rendering protection. So polymorphonuclear leukocytes is the best example for cellular barrier, and also there are some monocytes and some natural killer, that is type of lymphocytes like the B lymphocytes and the T lymphocytes, which are also capable of killing the or engulfing the pathogens or infectious agents that enter into a body. And they are capable of phagocytosing and destroying the microbes. So phagocytosis means they completely engulf the microbe, and with the help of release of some chemicals, they will just digest those microbes and prevent the microbes from reproducing further inside a body and causing further infection. So these are about the cellular barriers. So example for cellular barriers are polymorphonuclear leukocyte, monocytes and natural killer lymphocytes. So lymphocytes such as macrophages, all these are some of the examples. Next, moving to acquired immunity. Innate immunity, we get it right from the birth. It is present in a body and it is not specific to a particular infectious agent. Generally, it gets activated when we are exposed to an infectious agent and it protects our body generally. But acquired immunity is something which we take it from outside, from an external source like vaccination, like immunization and all that. So that is acquired immunity. So acquired immunity on the other hand is pathogen specific. So right from birth, you will be given, that is after 2 or 3 days of birth, you will be given the BCG vaccination, right? After that, maybe 6 months once, or after a year, after 2 years, or after 9 months, like that, different vaccinations are provided. Why different vaccinations need to be provided? One vaccination can be provided, therefore, or directly one antibody can be introduced into a body so that it can fight all the infections, right? But that is not possible because antibodies are specific to a particular pathogen. That is why when we had coronavirus, we had coronavirus shots. So we had coronavirus vaccinations taken, right? Why? Already we have taken so many vaccinations, viral related also during. We have taken vaccinations right from a childhood. Why this coronavirus vaccination? Because antibodies are pathogen specific. They need to be pathogen specific. So if the corona again mutates, we need to create a new vaccine for that and take vaccinations for that as well. So therefore, acquired immunity, they are pathogen specific. They're specific to a particular pathogen, and acquired immunity is always characterized by memory. Say for example, we have taken the corona vaccination and we have also taken the booster dose. Now we are free from coronavirus or the diseases caused by coronavirus for a certain period of time. Now, how our body renders this immunity, it is based on memory. So what does this corona vaccine? It contains weakened particles of the virus, right? So therefore, when it enters into our body, it will cause mild symptoms, but antibodies will start getting produced. That is the first immunity that we get, right? So the first immunity or the primary immunity that we get. Next onwards, again, say for example, if we get corona, then again the memory will be there in the cells. Oh, this is the pathogen that is entering. I have already antibodies. Again, antibodies for that will, additional antibodies pertaining to that particular pathogen will get produced and it will render second round of immunity, right? Or the secondary immunity. So that is how we gain the immunity based on memory. So therefore, our cells are capable of keeping the memory of the pathogen that has already entered into a body. Therefore, it will be easy for the cells to produce immunity against that particular pathogen. So that is how this acquired immunity works, it works on cell memory or it works on memory. And this means when a body encounters a pathogen for the first time, it produces a response which is called as primary response, which is of low intensity, and subsequent. Again, when the same pathogen enters into a body, a lot of antibodies get produced, and that is the secondary response. And one more term for the secondary response, we call it as anamnestic response. And this is ascribed to the fact that a body appears to have a memory of the first encounter. It's just like we teach in the class, you have a memory of what has been done in the class, but can you carry forward that same memory? No, you read again for the exam to regain or make the memory strong, right? Same way here also, the first encounter by the pathogen is the first memory. Keeping that memory, when again the same pathogen enters, the cells will keep the memory. Oh, this is the pathogen and I already have produced antibodies for this. Now additional antibodies need to be produced. And that is how they produce the antibodies and render protection against an infectious agent. So this is about acquired immunity, which we get it from outside. It is not present right from the birth, and it is specific to a particular pathogen. So here in the previous slide talking about acquired immunity, I told you in acquired immunity we have the primary response and secondary response. That is how our body produces antibodies which are responses based on memory to that particular pathogen. Now for that response, primary and secondary responses, when it happens, that what is that response? The response is in the form of antibodies, right? So those antibodies are nothing but they are the lymphocytes. So lymphocytes in a blood, that is the B lymphocytes and the T lymphocytes. So the B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes, they are capable of providing immunity whenever a pathogen attacks a body. So these B and the T lymphocytes, based on the pathogen entering into a body, for that they produce the antibody. So that is their function. Now talking about the B lymphocytes. So B lymphocytes, what do they do? So say for example, there is a pathogen entering into our body, our WBCs need to be, or the leukocytes need to be active, especially the lymphocytes need to be active. During that time, the B lymphocytes, they will produce an army of proteins or a cascade of proteins in response to the pathogen which has infected in our blood, therefore rendering protection against that particular pathogen. So these proteins are called as antibodies. So what are antibodies? Anti means against. Body means against a life, right? So it is acting against a body. That is, what is that body? It's a foreign pathogen which we call it as the antigen. So there are two words that you need to remember in this chapter. One is antibody and the other one is antigen. Antibody and antigen. So anti, wherever the word anti comes, it means it is against. Against what? Against a particular body. What is that foreign body? It's a body or an organism or a pathogen or an allergen that is coming from an outside source. So therefore, that is nothing but the antigen. So any pathogen entering into a body, that is called as an antigen. And for that antigen, the responses produced in a body are called as the antibodies. So therefore, the B lymphocytes produce an army of proteins in response to the antigens entering into a body, and that army of proteins which helps in fighting those antigens, we call it as the antibodies. So antibodies are produced by what? They are produced by the B lymphocytes. Now talking about the T lymphocytes or the T cells. So T lymphocytes directly, they do not secrete any antibodies, but if the B lymphocytes or the B cells, if they need to produce antibodies, then the T lymphocytes have to act on the B lymphocytes and make the B lymphocytes produce the antibodies. So therefore, antibodies are produced by which type of lymphocytes? It is the B lymphocytes. If the B lymphocytes needs to produce active antibody, it needs to take the help of T lymphocytes. So therefore, T lymphocytes help the B lymphocytes to produce the antibodies. Now, what are antibodies? Antibodies are nothing but proteins which are secreted by the B lymphocytes that acts against a particular antigen. Next, talking about antibodies. Since we know about antibody now, we'll talk about it. So, what is the structure? What are the different types of antibody that is there? What is the structure of the antibody? We will look into. So, each antibody molecule has 4 peptide chains. So, how many? It has 4. This is 1, 2, 3 and 4. We call them as peptide chains. Why peptide chains? Because antibodies are nothing but what? They are proteins, right? And proteins are nothing but made up of chains of amino acids. So when I say chains of amino acids, these amino acids need to be held by a bond. What is that bond? It is a peptide bond. So therefore, antibodies contains how many chains? They have 4 chains of peptide bonds. So their antibody molecule has 4 peptide chains, and they are called light chains and heavy chains. So they have 2 light chains. So this is the, I'll write it as LC. So this is the light chain and these 2 are the heavy chain. So therefore we call an antibody as H2 and L2. Almost all the antibodies, they look the same. They are of the same shape. They look like a Y. Only thing is their antigen binding site tends to change. If you remember in your first PUC, you have learnt about enzymes, right? Like in the enzyme, how the active binding site of the enzyme where the substrate comes and binds, it alters according to the shape of the substrate. Same way here, the shape of the antigen binding site, that is this region, gets altered according to the shape of the pathogen. Say for example, coronavirus, it gets altered according to the crown of the coronavirus. So like that. So they get altered. So that is why antibody is specific to a particular pathogen. So therefore, as I told you, since antibody has 2 heavy chains and 2 light chains, antibody is represented as H2L2. So in a body, there are different types of antibodies that are produced. We have immunoglobulin A, so IgA. Ig stands for immunoglobulin. Immunoglobulin. IgA, IgM, IgE and IgG. So all these antibodies are specific against fighting a particular infection. Say for example, IgA antibody, it prevents the adhesion or the sticking of the pathogen to the cell. So that is the function of the IgA. IgM, for example, it provides the first line of defense. So protecting a body against the first pathogen attack or first line of defense is given by IgM. IgE, for example, it protects a body against allergy. So whenever an allergy enters in, or allergen enters into a body, the first antibody that gets active is the IgE. And IgG, it prevents infection spreading to the tissues in our body. So that is the different functions these antibodies have. So remember IgE, it is important for MCQ. So IgE, it renders protection against allergens or allergy. So these are the types of antibodies, and these antibodies, where are they present? So they are present in the blood, and the response which and whenever a pathogen enters into a body or an antigen enters into a body, the response they render, we call it as the humoral immune response. So this is about humoral immune response. So this is about the antibody, the structure of the antibody and types of antibody. So further talking about the structure of the antibody, as I told you, antibodies, they have the light chain and the heavy chain, 2 light chains and 2 heavy chains. And at the tip of the light and the heavy chain, that is towards the N-terminal. So you know that amino acids or the structure of the protein, it has an N-terminal end and especially the primary structure of the protein, it has a N-terminal end and a C-terminal end, right? So if you see towards the N-terminal end, you can see the antigen binding site. So therefore, whenever, say for example, this is the antibody, the coronavirus has entered into a body, antibodies will get produced. So the antigen binding site will be designed according to how the crown of the coronavirus can fit, so that it can go and fit there and it can engulf it and destroy it. So that is how it works. And also these bonds, that is the light chain and the heavy chains, they are all held together by a disulfide bond. It is represented by SS. So it is a peptide chain. Antibody is a peptide chain. It has 2 long chains and 2 short chains. The long chains are heavy and the shorter chains are light. And these long chains and the short chain, they are held by disulfide bonds, and the antibodies at the N-terminal end, they have the antigen binding site, and these antibodies, they look like the shape of a Y, and they are specific to a particular pathogen, and their antigen binding site changes according to the pathogen that is entering into the body. So this is about the antibody, and also we got to know about the types of antibody. So we learnt about innate immunity, we learnt about acquired immunity. So acquired immune responses. So how these acquired immune cells or the lymphocytes, how do they respond? So acquired immune responses. So there are different types of acquired immune responses. One is antibody mediated. The other one is cell mediated immune response or cell mediated immunity. The other one is T lymphocyte mediated. So all these are examples for acquired immunity. That is, we don't have it right from the birth, but as we age, depending on the circumstances, they get produced or they become active inside our body. So one of the example is antibodies. The other one is cell mediated immune responses. The third one is T lymphocyte mediated, because the T lymphocytes, they will act on the B lymphocytes and make the B lymphocytes to produce the antibodies. And very often when some human organs like the heart, eye, liver, kidney, they fail to function, at that time transplantation is needed. So antibodies also get produced during organ transplant in a patient who needs an organ transplant. Why? Because I told you antibodies, they work against antigens, that is foreign bodies which is coming from outside. Now in a patient, say for example, his kidney has failed. He needs to get a kidney from a proper donor. Now a donor is available and the kidney is being transplanted. From where is the kidney coming? It is coming from outside. It belongs to another person's body. So therefore, for our body or for the patient's body who's undergoing a kidney transplant, that kidney is a foreign body itself, right? So once it is introduced or it is transplanted into the patient, our immune cells will become active. It will start attacking that organ, thinking that it is an antigen, it is a foreign body. So therefore, antibodies also gets produced during organ transplant. And that is why organ transplant patients are often given immunosuppressants. So immunosuppressants actually helps in bringing down the immune responses in a body. Therefore, until the particular organ gets adjusted into the patient's body. So that is how they do it. So we'll learn about that in the coming classes. So this is about the types of acquired immune responses. So this was about the session wherein we learnt about immunity, two types of immunity, innate immunity and acquired immunity. And we also learnt about the structure of the antibody, types of antibody, and the types of acquired immune responses rendered in a body. So in the coming session, we will learn about active and passive immunity. So this also comes under immunity, wherein we learn the examples, we learn about active and passive immunity, we learn what is allergies, and we'll also learn about something called as autoimmunity. So see you in the coming sessions with these topics. Thank you.